Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Bitchpedia podcast, or should I say, what up? Only like 50% of my listeners probably got that because my analytics say it's from like 18 to 36. So I may be missing a whole generation. But today's episode is all about nostalgia. And I thought, who better to come on than Jenna Barclay? I found you on TikTok and you've got incredible throwback videos. So I encourage everyone to go and find your TikTok because it's amazing. But you also have a podcast, and Jenna, I have been binging it. I'm obsessed with it.
I'm so happy to hear that. I love it.
Yes, it's called Talks in Class. And was that a thing for you? Did you get in trouble for talking in class all the time?
Oh my God. Yes. I think that is a direct quote from probably every single report card that I ever brought home. Like, not even just when I was a child, through just my whole life.
The whole time. Same, honestly. And we used to have these little slips. I was just telling someone this the other day. We had like red and blue slips that were always for talking in class, and I got them nonstop. But the joke's on them, isn't it? Because now
This is why
it's
we
an
have
acquired
podcasts.
skill. Exactly. So I've listened to a few of them, and I didn't realize you were going to have so many episodes on your podcast.
Yeah,
You have like 60 something episodes.
I've had the podcast now for like a year and a half or something like that. It's been a
Wow.
while, but being a one woman show, it's kind of like I've taken a couple breaks and
Yes.
so I try to keep as consistent with it as possible. It's typically weekly.
Yes, that's like a struggle that, and all of my listeners have listened, because I've had mine since it started in like 2020, and I only have just reached like 100 episodes. So that's something I'm very familiar with. But I've got a speed round question, okay, to get us started, and then we can get into it, because I want to encourage everyone to go listen to your podcast too, because honestly, when I looked, I knew that because I came up with the idea of the nostalgia podcast a while ago, and then when I came across your TikTok, we had been mutuals on there for a little while, and I was like, this is perfect, because I knew I wanted to dive in. And it's easy to think about it as like a surface level kind of superficial thing, but you do a really good job of diving in. And I was on my little walk this morning going, and I was really invested in this stuff. A couple of the things that I had written down just as like light questions, you have full episodes going into. So again, I encourage everyone to go listen. But I want to go through this little speed round, and it might be a Sophie's choice for some of these.
Ooh, okay.
So I'm excited. Okay, you ready?
Okay.
Okay, it's like a this or that. So 90s or 2000s?
I have to go 2000s because I was just a little too young in the 90s to like fully appreciate it, I think.
Fair. Yeah, fair. Okay, Brittany or Christina?
Brittany. I'm
All the
Brittany
way?
girl.
Okay. Puka shells or slap bracelet?
Ooh. I'm going to go puka shells.
You know what? I thought that was going to be your answer. I think I may be slap bracelets. Sidekick or flip phone?
I never had a sidekick, but I wanted one so badly. It
That was a
such
level
an
of
aspiration.
I never reached.
Exactly.
Yes.
That was like aspirational things before we had social media to tell us what was
Yes.
aspirational. So I guess I have to go flip phone because I never actually experienced the sidekick.
Fair. And it was so satisfying. This generation will never know.
That's true. It really,
Hanging up on someone.
Such a good
It
feeling.
was like slamming the door, you know?
Yes. That's true.
Okay. Laguna Beach or the hills?
Okay, this might be a hot take, but Laguna Beach.
Same.
I love Laguna. I can watch it over and over, and it's quick. Only 2 seasons. There's 3 technically, but we don't count that 3rd season.
I cannot believe that there were so few seasons. I feel like that was such a big chunk of my life.
Yes,
was those girls, right? That cast.
I feel like it's so disproportionate to how short of a time that it was on. My true argument for Laguna over the Hills is that the Hills would not exist if it weren't for Laguna Beach.
That's
technically
true.
The Hills is a spinoff, so we got to go
That's
with the
true.
OG.
Laguna Beach walked so the hills could run.
Yeah.
Okay, so in that same vein, Kristen or LC?
This is also definitely a hot take. I'm team Kristen, always have been, always will be.
Me too. Okay, but can I tell you something that's actually really disappointing? Because I just saw something, I think it was on TikTok, that was a clip from her. I guess she has a podcast.
Yeah.
And apparently she interviewed some guy and was saying that you don't need to wear sunscreen. And everyone was in an uproar because they were like, you have a responsibility on this platform and you're spreading misinformation. So I was a little sad. I'm going to give her a little break because I think after she left Jay Cutler, I don't know what happened in the dissolution of their marriage, but I've seen some clips from her interview where she's just like dogging him. And yeah, and she was talking to like a therapist, and she was like, so what do you do if your ex, it was supposed to be hypothetical, but it was very clearly her just like talking shit about her husband, which I watched their show together and he did kind of seem like like
Yeah,
a
it was an
wet
odd
noodle.
couple. I watched their
Right.
show too, and I was like, this is interesting. How does this dynamic, and it's so hard to tell when you're
Weird
watching a
dynamic.
reality show, if it's
Yeah,
real or if it's like the editing for the show, or if he didn't really want to have a lot of screen time. But I got the same feeling. It was a very strange
it was because
coupling.
it felt like he just wanted to be hunting in the woods,
Yeah, and
like he wasn't
she
invested.
is not, but now she's with another like country dude, so maybe that is deep down in her somewhere.
This is another hard one, The OC or One Tree Hill.
That is really hard. I never watched One Tree Hill at all when it was on the first time. I didn't watch a single episode of One Tree Hill until about 2 years ago when everybody just finally broke me down and made me watch it. I wasn't a big drama TV girl. I was like really
Okay.
into The Simple Life. I was really into Laguna Beach. I liked reality shows because I wanted to see like I just watched it for the clothes. I wanted to see what real people were wearing.
Totally.
But I did watch the OC because, like, talk about aspirational. They were everything I wanted to be.
Right. They were what Laguna Beach was basically like. That was the show version of
Exactly.
that.
Exactly. But now that I have watched One Tree Hill, I think I have to pick One Tree Hill because they're both so bad they're good. But I think One Tree Hill is actually better, even in
Yes, I was
the
gonna say too.
disclaimer
What's
of
it
so
like
bad they're
going
good.
back as an
And
adult watching
it
it?
was the best experience of my life. I wish that everybody could have the experience of watching it for the first time as an adult because it was such a
Yes,
wild ride and so nostalgic. I mean,
yes,
I have
yes.
so many exact items that Haley specifically, but also a few that Brooke in the early seasons, like I was like, oh my God, I had that shirt. I had those jeans, like crazy.
Yes.
So
Yeah, no, the
nostalgic.
trends were on point. Okay, so who was your favorite? I didn't even include Haley. I did Brooke or Peyton. But with Haley,
Definitely
you're going?
Brooke. Haley,
Okay, yes.
I just for some reason had a lot of the same clothes as her.
Same
I guess
style.
I guess I
Yeah.
had the same style as her. But yeah, Brooke Davis for president. I mean, love Brooke
Okay,
Davis.
yes. I loved Rachel, the redhead. She may have
Oh
been
my
one of
God.
my first girl crushes. I was obsessed with her.
She was amazing.
She had a rough edit.
Like you talk about teen dramas, like what was even
Yeah.
happening, especially in the later
Yes.
seasons when they're adults and then she's like,
Yes.
whatever.
Yes, her modeling career.
Yeah, it
Okay,
went off.
Nathan or Lucas?
Nathan for sure.
Nathan. Yes. Okay,
Yeah.
yes. Yes. I kind of flip-flopped with them because honestly, I loved Nathan in the early years, teen years, because he was like the bad boy. And then as I got older, I was like, maybe that was wrong. Maybe I should have been with Lucas the whole time because he seemed to be like the emotionally mature one, which is probably why I didn't like him.
And they both went through such roller coasters, like,
That's true. That's true.
they have a
Nathan
lot of
evolved
ups
in the
and
end.
downs. Yes. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Statement necklace or infinity scarf?
Ooh, that's a good one. I think I have to go with the statement necklace, although I probably
Yeah.
wore more infinity scarves than
I
statement.
love
Much
the
easier.
statement necklace. I wore them beyond like with like t-shirt and shorts.
Me
What are you
too.
doing with this nighttime prom jewelry?
I would wear like the V-neck slouchy t-shirt with like a pair of neon chino shorts with a necklace that took up my whole chest. And that was my outfit with like flip-flops. What is that?
You had to be there.
Truly.
Okay. Uggs or Crocs?
Uggs. Hands down.
100%. I got made fun of for my Crocs. iPad or Walkman?
Ooh.
Because the classic, the nostalgia of a Walkman, but it wasn't really as handy.
Yeah, it really wasn't. I don't know. I still think I have to go the Walkman because that was like the OG. And that's
The
something that I
ultimate.
actually remember experiencing on like some of the other early technology.
Yes. And you had to have the CD case that opened up, the binder that opened up with the CD case.
Yeah, and you had to hold it with your palm flat, otherwise it would
That where it
scare.
would scare. Okay, graphic tee or spaghetti strap shirt?
That's really hard because I loved both and still do. I guess spaghetti
Right.
strap, it just felt a little bit more scandalous.
Yeah, no,
Felt like
I
I
had
was getting away with something.
body. Exactly. I had body issues, so I wasn't ever gonna wear a spaghetti strap. And some of those graphic tees, when we look back now, is like,
So vulgar. I wonder how
well,
much awareness I had at the time because I can't
or our
imagine it went
parents.
completely. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine it went completely over everyone's heads, but I don't
Right.
know. It was a different
It did
time.
ours. Okay, trucker hat or fedora?
Well, that's a very difficult decision, but since I have my trucker hat sitting next to me, I
Yes,
have to go
my
with the trucker
God.
hat.
I'm obsessed. Listen, I love a fedora, and I wore it way beyond its expiration date.
So did I. The
I don't know that
straw
it was ever
fedora.
cool, but yes.
I was just looking at pictures of me in my straw fedoras earlier
It was
today.
incredible. It's I had the face for it. It just felt like the only hat that I could wear where I didn't look ridiculous. I probably did, but I didn't feel
Me
that way.
too.
And Brittany
I
wore
felt
them.
I felt cool in them too, and I also felt like they were somewhat practical because they would shade the sun. You could wear it to the beach, you could wear it
Yes.
out. Like I wore it a lot, like day drinking in my early 20s. I was at the right
Yes,
age for
with
the
the crimped
straw
hair
to drop.
coming out at the
Yeah.
bottom. Okay, bump it or butterfly clip?
Oh my God. I gotta go bump it. Those are my college days. That
Really?
bump it. Yeah,
I
that
would have
bump
guessed
it
for
had a
sure you
lot, a
got a lot
lot
of
of
action.
activity.
Okay, capris or Bermuda shorts?
God, they're both awful. I
I
guess
know.
capris, just because when I think of Bermuda shorts, I think of those plaid ones from like
Yes,
middle school, and they were just so
yes.
unfortunate. I don't
Oh my
what.
God, I wore those. I've got a picture of myself somewhere. I'll have to send it to you afterwards and let you see because it was the exact ones you're talking about.
Yep, please.
And I wore them too much too. Cargo pants or gauchos?
That is tough. I mean, I still have two pairs, original pairs, black and brown. I want to go
Incredible.
cargos because they're back in style now and I wear them, but I
Yeah,
think I have to go gauchos for the impact they
just
made
for
on me
principle.
personally. I really was very
Exactly.
committed to those more than I should have
Exactly.
been.
Right. Yeah, but they were so comfortable though, you
They were
know?
comfortable. I don't entirely hate them even now. I mean, they're not great, but
Take.
for the comfort level,
Committed
like,
to it,
you
right.
know?
Right. They're like yoga pants.
Yeah.
Okay, chunky belt or the Avril Lavigne tie that people wore around their waist.
Oh my God, the ties. I forgot about those. I guess chunky belt. I was never cool
I
enough for the
never
tie.
I wasn't either. I felt like I wasn't emo enough or like skateboard. You know, the skateboard vibe was not mine, but I wore the shit out of a chunky belt.
Oh, me too.
Again, way beyond probably what I should have. MTV or VH1?
Obviously, the clear answer is MTV, but VH1 had all those good trashy reality shows.
I was trying to choose this morning and I was like, okay, MTV The Challenge, obviously the real world, but Daisy of
TRL.
Love,
Yeah,
I was
that's what I'm saying.
obsessed. Yeah, they had the
All
good
of those
trash.
Rock of Love. They had like the
Yes,
Tila Tequila show
Flavor of
in the
Love,
MySpace
Tila
days.
Tequila,
Flavor of
I
Love.
love New York.
They
Yes,
all love New York. They were so bad and they were so good.
yes. Wait, have you watched House of Villains yet?
No.
Watch it immediately.
All right.
It's got New York on there, and then Johnny Bananas.
Oh my God.
What's the guy's name from Survivor? Johnny Fairplay from Survivor.
I don't know Survivor people that well, but I'll watch it.
I've never watched it, but I remember him because he lied on TV and it was like something so he didn't get eliminated. And he was
Oh,
like, my
wait.
grandma died.
I remember hearing about this. I never even watched the show really, but I remember hearing about that. Now that you say
Exactly.
that. Funny how certain things like stick out in culture and just
Yes.
embed themselves into your memory.
Yes. Especially considering that we were getting all this without the internet,
True. Very true.
you know? Okay, so I'm going to jump into some of the questions now that I have. I want to ask you because I've seen a lot of your videos. We talked today about how ashamed I was that I didn't have any nostalgic clothing. And you're like, no, I've got so many for inspiration. All of your videos, you have all these things that I'm sure some of them you found later, but a lot of these you have from childhood. What made you, did you just save them? I mean, obviously you didn't know that they were going to come in handy one day, but what made you hang on to them?
It's so funny because my typical response to this question is that it was pure laziness, and that is a pretty accurate answer if I were to like distill it down. But it's a
I was going to
two-part.
ask emotional hoarding.
Yeah, that's part of it though, because a lot of the stuff that I have is stuff that was expensive or I got as a gift or like nice things. So like I'm wearing my Tiffany heart necklace. I got this in high school. I think I got it for Christmas or my birthday or something. And like, you know, this was expensive, so I kept it. I have my Coach bags. I have my Dooney and Burke bag. I have like my 7 For All Mankind jeans that I remember I worked at the mall and I saved my money for like 6 months to buy those stupid jeans. They were my whole personality. So some of the stuff that I have are things like that I just, when I was purging my closet, I didn't get rid of, even though I wasn't wearing them anymore because they had that value to me because they were like nice. And then a lot of the other stuff is there just because of pure laziness. It's funny because when I went to college, initially I went to college about 30 minutes away from where I grew up. So I didn't really move away because I would go home all the time. Like I brought my laundry home every single weekend. So I didn't totally clean out my room, and then my mom never cleaned it out. And then I moved away for college and I would go home for break. So it was kind of like I had this room because I would come home a lot. So it never felt like I completely moved out. But every time I would come home, my mom would be like, can you please go through some of your stuff in your room? And I never did. And fast forward.
And now it's like a time capsule.
It literally is. So that part is just pure laziness. I just never cleaned it out. And my mom,
and what do you do with it? You know,
it's hard because now there is so much stuff that obviously I don't need it anymore. But then now that this is what I do for my job, I'm like, but I might need that littlest
I
pet
do
shop
need
play
it.
set for a video
Yes.
someday, you
Yeah.
know? So
Yeah, it'll come
yeah,
in handy.
it will.
Yeah, and
Thankfully,
also,
my
I
mom
don't know
lives
if your
alone.
parents, right, and I don't know if your parents were the same way, but I remember my mom talking about a lot of the staples, and I've got a question about this later too, about us kind of like being our parents, which makes me want to throw up. But I remember her saying, like, I had a lot of these things I wish I held on to, that
Yes.
these things, style is cyclical, it's always going to come back around. So I do kind of wish I would have held on to. I've got a jean jacket that I've had since, like middle school. But other than that, I didn't really hold on to a lot of stuff that I kind of wish I would have. But
Yeah.
probably, honestly, most of it was just like junk that, I should have made space for anyway and shouldn't have held on to for so long.
Yeah.
So do you have a favorite trend and then a least favorite trend also?
Past things that I've lived through.
Yeah.
There are so
Mine,
many.
honestly, my least favorite, I'm going to say, is the eyebrows. Whenever we tweezed our
Oh,
fucking eyebrows, I still haven't recovered from that.
and you know what's so funny? Speaking of turning into our parents, I specifically remember the first time I went to town with the tweezers, and my mom
Yeah.
said, "What have you done? You are going to regret this. Mark my words." And
Yes.
I thought I knew what was up, and I was like,
Of
"Mom,
course.
I don't know what you're talking about. This is cool. This is what everybody wants their eyebrows to look like, and what everybody
Right.
like. Of course, I'm going to want my eyebrows to look like Pamela Anderson for the rest of my life."
Right. And of course, they'll grow back.
Yeah, never grew back. I mean, these are fake. Like they literally
Right.
never grew
Right.
back.
Same.
So I agree
Yeah.
with you on the eyebrows. And there are so many trends that I look back on and I'm like, wow, that was not cute, but there's a nostalgia element to it that reminds me of the time. So it doesn't feel as awful. But I would say a lot of the stuff we were doing, it's funny, I just posted a video on TikTok right before this about specifically the year 2009. A lot of the stuff we were doing around like 2008, 2009, I look back on and I'm like, this is just terrible in every way. It was just like
Right.
really cheap, basic, ugly clothes, like the tunics over those little cotton leggings that were see-through and the shirts that came down mid-thigh.
Yes.
That did nothing for me. And I would probably think did nothing for a lot of people. That era is probably the most questionable. And then a
That's
lot of
fair.
the beauty trends were just really bad.
Yes.
The
And I feel
eyebrows,
like,
the
honestly,
bronzer,
the bronzer, that's the tanning.
the
Tanning
tanning,
beds.
the eyeliner all the way around my eye, as thick as it could be.
Yeah.
My eyes in pictures, when I look back, they look so tiny because I had a layer of eyeliner just like all right around
Yes.
the rosy around the eyeball.
Yes, and kudos to my mom because she did the same thing. I remember I had beautiful eyebrows, and I remember her saying, that you're gonna regret it. And of course, I'm like you. I'm like, I know best, and I tweezed them. But kudos to her for not looking at me and laughing in my face for the way I was doing my makeup because she didn't wear a lot of makeup. I didn't have a lot of people. My older sister didn't teach me how to do it. We didn't have
Same.
YouTube to go do tutorials. We were kind of just figuring it out. And
Uh-huh.
oh my God, I was a disaster.
Yes, me
Like,
too.
so kudos to her for not laughing in my face. One of the things I wanted to ask you was we talk about nostalgia, and I know a lot of Gen Z is like obsessed with Y2K, so to speak. But do you think that they are nostalgic for an era that doesn't actually exist or didn't actually exist?
100%. And I think
Yeah.
I was just talking about something like this because I forgot what we were watching, but we were watching something that took place in the 70s. And when I look at my own fashion sense, I love everything very 70s influence. That's probably a big
Uh-huh.
reason why I loved so much of the fashion in the 2000s because we were just cosplaying the 70s in a
Recycling.
lot of ways.
Right.
And we were watching whatever it was, and I was like, man, I feel like I missed my calling and like not living through this era. And I think that's
Right.
the same way that a lot of these younger people feel. And I did a whole episode about this of life in the 2000s, Instagram versus or social media versus
Yes,
reality.
that's one of the one that I wrote down because, and I was glad that I picked it because when I chose it, it was like this was the question that I had is because I'm the same way. I was, we talk about the 50s or Taylor Swift, God forbid, the song that she just had talking about a different decade. We forget, like, yes, we like the aesthetic. I love poodle skirts, and I thought it was cute. I love the music from the 50s, but also it was like rampant with racism and like
Right.
women couldn't have their own bank account,
Right.
like. So we forget, and so this is just another generation doing the same thing too, I think.
Yes. And even the
I'm with
fashion
you.
and some of the pop culture things that are very romanticized now, the fashion that we're getting in these recreation nostalgia videos is not accurate for 90% of what was going on in real life. We were wearing plaid Bermuda shorts. We didn't look cute. We did not look like Mary-Kate and Ashley. We didn't look like the Disney Channel stars. I wanted to.
Yes.
I desperately wanted to, but we didn't. So
That's what we were going for.
yeah, and it didn't work because
Yes.
we were like little tweens. So yeah, I think it's really interesting to see this happen now. for the first time for a time period that I have vivid memories of living through, and now understanding exactly what my parents felt like when I was running
Yeah.
around in my, I called them low-rise flares, and my mom was like, "No, no, no, those are hip hugger bell bottoms. I don't know what this
Right.
rebrand is, you know?" So
Isn't
it
that
does
the worst? Figuring out we are just saying the exact same thing that our parents said to us.
literally
A
exactly the same.
horrifying realization that we
Yep.
had.
Yep.
Well, that's something too. I was just watching Lady Bird, which was not an old movie, but it was set in like the
I just watched
2000s.
it too. That's so funny.
That's random
Like a
because that's
week
an old
ago.
one.
Yeah, it is.
That's weird. Well, you saw, okay, so when she's sitting down and they're talking about terrorism because she wants to go to college in New York and all that stuff,
Yes.
that was one thing that I kind of forgot because I don't want to say how old you were, what year you graduated. I graduated high school in 2009. So Y2K, I was 10. So I was still really young and didn't really know. Like, I remember everyone kind of freaking out about the computers were going to shut down, but I didn't know what that meant. You know what I mean? Like, I just remember there's one vivid memory that I have of New Year's, and it was that 2000, like when the clock strikes midnight, we're supposed to be, the world is going to end, and then it came and it went. And I think that's the only experience I have of things that were supposed to be really scary that were kind of catastrophized that didn't play out as much, like a lot of fear mongering.
Oh yeah.
And I know that there was a lot of people, like our parents had the same thing, but now that's what I'm trying to remember as an adult, as I'm moving through this stuff with, TikTok ban, women's rights, all this stuff is happening. And it's like, yes, it's scary and there's wars and things like that. But I have to remember this is not the first time that this has happened. So I kind of reflect back on Y2K often as like,
Yes.
it was scary, but it was fine.
Yeah.
Don't let
And
the loud voices get to you.
that's another thing with romanticizing the past is everybody wants to talk about like, life right now is so awful and there are all these terrible things happening and it's like, well, we just have so much access to it
Hmm.
24/7. Just because we can look at the past and select which memories we want to focus on doesn't mean that those things weren't there. I mean, I graduated high school in 2005, so I was a freshman in high school when 9/11 happened. That whole
Right.
period post 9/11, I mean, really all the way through the 2000s until probably like 2009, 2010 is when it started to kind of fade, was
Right.
terrifying. I mean, we lived in fear every day of a terrorist
Right.
attack. There was a war going on that was like, you talk about propaganda, not to get too heavy, but like it was
Right.
really a scary, very unsettling time. And then, right as that was sort of fading, we had the 2008 financial crisis. So
Mm,
it wasn't all this rainbows and, unicorns that we like
right.
to look at it now. It was
Yeah.
very scary. Every time period has its things.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of cherry picking of like, oh yeah, it was, MySpace. Like,
Yeah, we didn't
yeah,
have
but
social media yet.
right. And that's one thing that I don't remember which episode it was that I was listening to from your podcast, but you were talking about that too, of like, they act like we were on the frontier, that we didn't have any, like we're living out in the woods with no electricity. But we were in the beginning stages of the internet where, of course, our parents were like, I don't even know if we understood the extent of like what you put on the internet stays there forever. Even though we did hear that, right? That it's going to be there. We didn't know.
Oh, I
Like
absolutely did not
nowadays things are coming
understand.
back. Right. And we were kind of on the forefront of that, talking about mental health. Like we didn't know how it was going to affect our mental health. We didn't know about like online bullying. We didn't
Oh
know
my
about
god,
the
not at all.
access, like you're saying, of having information bombarding us all the time about every horrible thing in the world always, like the effect that was going to have on us. We were kind of the first generation. And I think now maybe Gen Z and Gen Alpha are kind of the ones who are coming into it who have it their whole life. But
Mhm.
do you think that millennials, I don't want to say had it harder because there's probably no comparing, but that I think we were the generation that were alive during that shift, right? Where it went
Yes.
from like no internet to internet.
Yeah. I think in
And
a
that's kind
big
of
way,
jarring.
media literacy is a huge issue. You don't
Mhm.
have to go too far into any comment section on the internet to see that like media literacy does not exist. But the
Mhm.
older generations, us included, have
Right.
less of that because we're
Elder
not
millennials.
native, like we're not internet natives. Millennials, like you said, kind of toe the line because we grew up with it, but we literally grew up with it. Like we grew up as
Right.
it was kind of evolving. So I think that we learned to kind of adapt as we've gone. Whereas, like you mentioned, Gen Z and certainly Gen Alpha, they don't know a world where this doesn't exist. So I think in some ways it makes it easier for them because they probably do have a little bit more media literacy. And I think they're able to
Mhm.
compartmentalize better than we can.
Mm.
Also, they don't know a world where it doesn't exist. So I think it's like the fish not seeing the water, right? Like they can't
Right.
see the problems with it because they don't know what it's like not to have it. We know what it's
Without it.
like to go out and just live your life without fear that every embarrassing thing that you're going to potentially do might end up on the internet. And they don't know what that's like, which to me sounds, I mean, that's horrifying to think
Right.
that they don't know
Right.
a world where that isn't the reality or couldn't be
Right.
the reality.
Yes, and that we would have to like actively, I mean, the internet's not going anywhere, probably ever, 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 unless they're, shuts down something. But like in times is what I'm thinking. But to think that they would have to actively, that it's like that is the nostalgic that they're gonna have to chase is like, we're gonna go cell phone free, like we'll have a whole 2 days with no internet. And that's gonna be crazy. We're gonna be roughing it, that's gonna be like a paid experience that people go into of like
Oh,
having to
yeah.
escape, the internet.
I mean, we saw that a little bit with the kind of push of Gen Zs taking flip phones out to the bars and stuff a couple of years ago. Last winter, my husband and I went to a Bush concert, which we're aging myself with Bush, but
Right.
the crowd was older. Obviously, it was like Gen X and
Right.
elder millennials. I'm a middle millennial, but my husband's like on the line of Gen X and millennial. And there was this probably Gen X mom with her teenage daughters there. And one of the girls had a digital camera and she was taking videos of the concert. And I was like, this is bananas that something that I did in college out of necessity, because that's the technology that we had,
Right.
is now nostalgic for these kids to the point where they're like, I'm going to a concert. And I would imagine the thought process probably was, I want to be in the moment. I don't want to have my phone. So I'm going to take this digital camera.
Right. It's like, you're gonna have to get those developed, right? I don't
Yeah.
even know if they can
Or
you
you have
develop
to,
pictures anymore.
this was a digital one, so she's gonna have to try to upload it. Like, I don't even know how. I literally don't know how to upload photos from a digital camera
Me
anymore. I'd
neither.
have to Google that.
Right.
Lost that skill
Right. Yeah, they don't know what it's like not to be able to like sync your computer and all your, digitized things
automatically.
together.
We didn't
Right.
have it that easy.
Right. Never forget. Well, one of the things I wanted to talk about too of our generation was the paparazzi culture and just in general magazines, which is like a lost form now. I know they still have magazines, but everything's basically online. And I know because I don't know if I probably talk about this every podcast episode to the point where people are gonna be like, enough. But I swear to you, I'm not name dropping, but it just gave me so much insight because I made a TikTok. I don't know if you saw it, where Brittany went to school with me and I was in school with her sister, like grew
Wait,
up with Jamie
I
Spears.
did see this.
Okay, so I posted one because I don't like talking about it because it always makes me feel awkward. But like it was so meta for me because I was able to see like 1 degree away. She was coming to our pep rallies and stuff, which
Oh
was
my god.
crazy. So we saw like her coming in with her shaved head and like the whole breakdown from beginning to end. Because when I transferred, it was in second grade, I transferred to school and I didn't know who she was. So when I showed up, she was clearly the popular girl. Everyone was talking about her sister. And I was like, I don't know who that is. I knew who Jessica Simpson was. I knew who Backstreet Boys were. You couldn't like Backstreet Boys. You had to like NSYNC. Couldn't like Christina. You had to like Britney. So I remember I came home the first day of school. I came home and told my mom I had to go buy a Britney Spears CD because I needed to like research. I was like, everyone knows who she is. So it was this like phenomenon that was taking over. But I also got to see firsthand her sister, like how that affected her and to watch her family dynamic kind of break up. So that was always something that was really close. And paparazzi, like seeing Britney scream, seeing Jamie scream and like cuss out the paparazzi for chasing Britney. Like it was, you know what I mean? It was right there. So it was able to see like how false the narrative that they were putting out in magazines and stuff. So how do you think that even now, like, do you think that that prepared us for social media? Like the
Mm.
bullying that we saw in paparazzi, like what impact do you think that that had?
Yeah, that's such an interesting question. I've never really thought about it that way. And I have a really hard time with it because Britney Spears was like, I was obsessed with Britney Spears. I was obsessed with
Right.
Paris Hilton. So I was very much participating in this paparazzi culture
Mhm.
by being a rabid consumer of it. I mean,
Right.
I was ate it all up. I literally remember where I was when I found out that Britney shaved her head. Like I can picture sitting at my friend's apartment. We were regaming to go out and my friend
Okay.
came in and threw like a tablet down and was like, Britney Spears shaved her head. She's having a meltdown. And I was like, oh
Yeah. A
my.
mental
So
health crisis.
yes. And yeah, so it was Looking back, it is so disgusting the way that these women were treated, and men too, I'm sure, but really the women, it
Right.
was
Right.
just so vile and and so invasive. And like you said, the narratives were always spun to make them look
Mhm.
the worst possible that they could. So, yeah, I think that on the one hand, it at least prepared us in that it gave us some exposure to how bad it could be. But because
Mhm.
most of it didn't have the experience like you did, which is so fascinating. But for most of us, they were like people like me who I was watching from afar and
Right.
eating up every word. I didn't understand how dangerous it was at the time or
Mm.
how fabricated sometimes it was at the time, or also, really importantly, how big of a business it was, how much money that
Yes.
was in
Yes.
destroying these women's reputations and kind of keeping them down for publicity and therefore money, and how many people were kind of benefiting from it and all of the structures in it. So if we
Yeah.
would have had a little bit more insight into how it was impacting them, I think it would have prepared us a lot. And I think that we are getting that a lot now with all of the
Mhm.
documentaries that are coming out, and also just through social media, people just having more access to talk to each other and share
Yes.
stories. But we were
Yeah,
very
and the
much fed a
access.
narrative back then.
Right, and the access too, I think a lot of that has been taken away with, like, Twitter and things like that, where now it's like celebrity, there's no in between. It's
Right.
like if they have a thought, how they're feeling all the time when they're putting stuff out,
So true. Yeah.
unless it's like Kim Kardashian who does a lot of, and that too, like, that's frustrating too because, I mean, I get it's a double-edged sword because you want people to share their lives, but of course you're gonna be ripped apart no matter what you do. Like, I've seen nasty comments from someone who was it was like a female astronaut, and this is something I talked about in one of my past episodes, talking about like my getting over my fear of exposure because that was really like deeply embedded because I was fascinated by it then, and I was like you I didn't understand like the consumerism or like the business of it that we were, that it's a money making scheme for all these people to destroy her life. I
Hmm.
just knew that when we went to football games, people would come up and we're in the middle of like because we just there's our graduating class had like 40 people. You know what I mean? It was a small town and we're all
Right.
just talking, hanging out, and then they would come up and want an autograph or want to take a picture with Jamie. And if she said no, then it's like she's a bitch. And now for the rest of their lives, they're gonna tell the story about what a bitch she was because what you know what I mean? And it's like the power that that has, so you just always have to be on.
Yes.
And I was thinking about it this morning because as I was thinking about nostalgia, I was thinking about like what it was like in, middle school, junior high. And it was really meta before I knew that that was the word. It was really meta because we're in like geography class and I'm studying maps of the world and she's got a script for her
Oh,
own show that she's like reading in class. So I was fascinated by it the whole time. And of course, like psychology has always been kind of my hyperfixation. So I always thought it was really interesting because you could clearly see like she had major trust issues, rightfully so, but like she did not let a lot of people in, so that was something as social media grew, as I started posting TikToks and putting myself out there, that was always something that was really in the back of my mind of like, it can happen overnight. And then I have to think about, I have a kid, like
yeah.
what are you putting your family and all your loved ones up for? And like, is it worth it? Because you do see, I mean, yes, we're in a different age now, but like the downfall of her was real, and now God bless her. I hope she's, you know, doing well. But I understand more and more every day why she shaved her fucking head, you
Oh,
know?
100%. I say this all the time. And I have similar feelings with, being a on a very small scale, a public
Mhm.
figure, whether it's a
Right.
podcast or a TikTok or social media, you are putting yourself out there
Mhm.
to the masses. And that is really scary because people are insane. I mean, people are crazy,
Yes.
not just the mean comments, but just the way, like you said, somebody can take one little interaction and spin it, and it's
Mhm.
really scary. Um, but yeah, I think about this a lot about I if I were to ever be famous on that scale, I would be Britney famous. I would not be like Kardashian famous. I think there are people
Right.
who are very good at being famous
Mhm.
and playing that game. Brittany was good at it for a short period and then she went really far in the other direction. I would not be good at it because that is
Right.
so much emotional labor to have to
Mhm.
be on all the time, to have to just kind of put yourself out there for people to just tear you down, because that's really what it
Yeah.
is. If you look at these really successful celebrities, especially female celebrities who have managed to maintain their fame for a long period of time, a lot of it comes at the expense of probably their sanity and their mental health, because it's like, well, you're kind of losing relevance. Let's get a scandal in the
Yep.
news and then people are going to say awful things about you, and it's a vicious cycle, and it's so hard, like painful for me to wrap my
Yeah.
mind around what that experience would be like, truly.
Right. And that's kind of like with, I know you watch reality TV Bravo. That's kind of, Stassi just did an interview. It was about a Taylor Swift song. I haven't listened to the album, but it was something about basically how you created this monster and now y'all are mad at me. And she was drawing the comparison of like, y'all want good TV, so I act like a monster, and then everyone turns on me, and now, you know what I mean? So it's like, like, what do you want for? There is no winning, and
Yeah.
that's hard for me. Like, I just posted something about, it was one of the girls from Summer House, and I was frustrated because I try not to be mean. I try really hard to keep it like loving, pure content, but then also when I go too far in that direction, I'm like, you're not a spiritual guru. Like, you can relax a little, right? So then I posted this video that was like, Danielle's a pick me, and she was horrible because she slept with this
Yeah, I
guy
saw
that
that
her
video.
friend, it was a whole thing. So as I'm talking about this, then people start commenting and they're like, yeah, she's a whore. She slept with a guy. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like, now I've opened the floodgates. And I
Yes.
really have gone back and forth about that a lot because I have my two accounts that I do for the Bravo stuff, which has more followers, gets more interaction. I have Bravo celebrities that follow me. You know what I mean? So I've got more what you call success over there versus the podcast. And then my second profile that's like the sweet, wholesome stuff that doesn't do as well. And then I was constantly battling myself because I felt like I was torn between these two things of like what you said, like, do you give the people what they want? Right. Because I know that I could probably have 100,000 followers if I was going on here and just like dogging everyone out, which I don't want to do. And then even because this is the paradox of it, even when you don't say anything mean, like I said with the female astronaut, people just are nasty no matter what you say, so then that's the times when I think
100%.
about it and I'm like, do I even want to do anything on social media? Like I mean, you can imagine, right? Like you've got
Yeah.
wholesome, pure content. Do you still have people that say nasty things to you?
All the time. And to your point, they'll take it in a direction that I never would have intended it to. And I struggle with this a lot too, because one thing that I have realized probably more than anything else through my experience of being a social media creator over the past three,
Right.
4 years or whatever it's been, is that people just want to be mean. That's what they want. They want you to be mean so that they can be mean back. They want to feel validated for their mean feelings. They want to feel validated for whatever negative things they're stewing inside of them. And they want to feel misery loves company is what it comes down
Yes.
to. I will have something that I post that's just, any silly thing, and there will be full on battles going down in the comments between people. And I've had to block people before because they're not necessarily even saying anything mean to me,
Right.
and that happens too, but a lot of the times it's people are coming at each other in the comments so hard that I'm like, I can't. You're getting blocked because you're being so vile to these strangers,
Right.
and
Right.
it
Like
makes me
now
feel
I've
like, am I giving
created
you a platform?
exactly. That's exactly what I struggle with. And I have like my whole life, and maybe it was because of how I grew up, and that was always something that I wanted to do. And when I made my first TikTok, or the first one that like went crazy, it was an Erica Jane impression. This was probably 3 years ago. And I made some video making fun of her because she was like, Tom's house was broken into, whatever it
Oh
was.
yeah. Oh, iconic.
And it went crazy. And then that's when it started. And I was like, okay. So then I started making them. It was supposed to be these like fun, lighthearted, the Bethany video. I make fun of Bethany and I try not to do it too much because like she's clearly going through it. So I
Yeah.
try to toe the line between like satire and it's like we're all having good fun and like you can kind of make, I don't want to say make fun of them, but make fun of them because they're these like caricatures,
Right.
and then they're just over the top. Like, but there's a line and there's nuance. And it was like that. Like, even when you're trying to have fun with it, you do give people space for, and that's when I had like a full on breakdown probably 2 years ago where I was like, I'm not fucking doing this anymore because it was, like you said, it was nasty. And they did just they want to comment on people's life. And then they do that spin where it's like, well, you're on reality TV or you
Yep.
chose to be in public. So you
Yep.
asked for this.
Yep.
And it's like, what I think our society is getting better. And I think probably Gen Z and Gen Alpha, which I've got so much hope in them. Some people say that I put too much hope in them, but I really do. Like
I
my kid
agree.
growing up it blows my mind how open they are, but I hope that we can find a way But like you said, I think you have to choose between being like us, that's like we're kind of just out here winging it and learning as we go, or someone like the Kardashians who turn it into a full-fledged business, and then that's not authentic. So you know what I mean? It's like, so do I
Right.
show up as my authentic self, or even what's her name, Kylie Jenner? I saw, I don't know where the interview was from, but they were talking about how she had created this like persona where it was like she basically was being fake because when they rejected her or they were mean to that version of her, it wasn't really her.
Yeah.
And I was like,
I
as
think
much
about
as I,
Paris Hilton a lot with that too. You know,
yes,
the Paris Hilton that we all know is not her. And I think that is an armor. And I feel this way sometimes
yes.
too, because sometimes I try to, because you mentioned you had like a breakdown. I have that
Mhm.
breakdown probably like once every 3 months where I'm like, I'm done. I'm not doing this anymore. It happens all the time, whether it's like people being mean or just like the fickle nature of social media.
Yes.
But I try to kind of gauge what my gut reaction to
Mhm.
negative comments is and why I feel that way. And I have noticed actively that if I recreate an outfit, for example, that I it's head to toe all items from my closet from the time I have pictures of me wearing it, I loved it, whatever. If that gets negative feedback, it hurts versus if I recreate an outfit with stuff that I thrifted and maybe I didn't actually wear that, but I'm just kind of like putting on a character, or if it's
Yeah.
a parody skit video and that
Mhm.
obviously that's not how I actually behave,
Right.
those hurt less because it doesn't feel like it's an actual attack on me, even though I mean I'm making fun of
Right.
2005 me in the video.
Right.
That's okay. But if somebody else does, I'm like, oh man, that hurts a little bit. So
Right.
yeah, it's hard, and I think a lot of celebrities probably do feed us some version of a character because you have to. You can't
Right.
give the public your whole genuine self. It's not what they want, first of all. Nobody wants to
Ri
watch a normal, well-adjusted human being
That's
go
so
through life.
true.
You know,
That's
that's
so true.
why like reality shows start to suck when they get too old and like start going to therapy.
Yes.
You know,
That's
they
Vanderpump
have
Rules,
to.
and watching them be sober, like, that's one thing that I've noticed
Oh
too
my
is,
God,
like,
yeah.
when they're if they're sober and they're having conversations where it's like they're all going to therapy, yeah, it's like people don't want that. They want people like Tamara Judge who are gonna go in there and stir the pot, and I think that's something too that I thought about with Bravo specifically, because 'cause I'm also terrified of Andy Cohen, like, of Bravo as a whole, and getting, like, I don't wanna say, like, shadow banned, but, like, in
Oh,
public life, you know?
if
Like,
there is an
I'm
Illuminati,
terrified.
Andy Cohen is definitely a part of it. Like the man is
Yes,
running the world behind the scenes somehow.
yes, and I had a video, I don't know if I did ever post it, but I looked for it and couldn't find it one day, but it was basically saying, like, "Do you think that he's kind of, like, using these women up and spitting them out?" And you see a lot of people like Brandy Glanville basically said that of, like, and Bethany, I mean,
She's
she's
on her
misguided,
gold.
and I think she's doing it, for the wrong reasons, but she's not wrong about a lot of stuff. Like, yeah, they do want you, they don't care. You're replaceable. Like, they want people to be dramatic. And if you end up in rehab, like Raquel, they don't care. You know what I mean? They gave the best, she gave the best season of Vanderpump Rules. Who cares if she has to go to a mental health facility for however, or her life is ruined. And now you can never get another job again because when they go to Google you, like, the internet doesn't go away. It's
Yeah,
there forever. I think about that so often. So I'm with you. I regularly, and it makes me feel better for you to say that too. Like, I regularly have these thoughts of like, do I just wrap it up and throw it in? But the answer that I've come to, if this gives you any help, because I've talked about this ad nauseum on the podcast too, is like, I'll do it. I'll have those moments of panic and then kind of check in, like you said, with your gut and see like, why am I holding back? And am I just trying to stay small so that I can stay safe? Because by the way, that's not realistic either. You know what I
no,
mean? Like, even on a small scale,
yeah,
people are still, you know, they
yeah,
still wanna watch the world burn, they wanna be mean.
exactly. And back to what we were talking about with the paparazzi culture in the 2000s and the downfall of all of the it girls, the downfall of Britney
Mhm,
Spears, the downfall of Lindsay Lohan, the downfall of Nicole Richie, Paris Hilton, whoever it was, they
mhm.
went through this downfall because the public loves a downfall. That's the story they want. So I think it is
Especially of women.
unavoidable, especially with
Yeah.
women. So I think it is unavoidable, no matter where you are on the scale of being in the public eye, that at some point you will have somewhat of a downfall, or people at least will be trying to tear you down every step of the way, which obviously we experience this every single day. It's just the way that
Right,
it is, which is so unfortunate, but it's part of
right,
the game.
right, and I guess too with, like, putting out, um video. So with my podcast, I'm going to record it and then I edit it, I put it out. I don't get an immediate feedback. But with TikTok, it's like
Yes.
you wait 3 minutes and you look down, and sometimes it's with the best. I'm sure this happened to you. The best of intentions. You like post a video, and you're like, okay, I'm not gonna look, and you're like, okay, let's look, let's see the feedback, and you look, and it's just like mean, mean, mean. Like that's happened before, where I'm like, oh no, just
And then you're like, do I
delete
take
the
it down?
video.
Did everybody go left with this? Yeah.
Yes, and then that's the thing too, is like you hear people attack celebrities when they do that. They're like, coward, turn on the comments, and it's like, okay, like there is no winning in the situation.
There's not. There's no winning.
So we were talking earlier about like posting and making fun of yourself too. That's something I want to say because that was a thing for me. I did a podcast episode that was like embrace the before picture because that was something I was really afraid of, is like being cringe or being afraid to be seen, not being good at something. And I feel like you did it in a really clever way where you were able to take that past version of yourself, because that's everyone. Like we said, the internet wasn't really around for our middle school years, so most of that wasn't
Thank
like
God.
online, right? It wasn't like online documented, but if it was, it would be horrific.
I'm
But I
grateful
think you
for
do
that
a really
every
good
day.
job, right? Right. But I think you do a really good job of embracing that and kind of poking fun at it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that we all have these memories that are cringe or whatever, and there are
Mhm.
definitely ones that I post a lot of old photographs because it's one thing if you recreate the outfit, because this is what I look like in 2024. Even if I'm in a ridiculous outfit, this is still me. It's
Right.
another thing if I'm posting the pictures from 2002 with the eyebrows and the makeup and the
Right.
hair. It was all really bad. And there
Yes.
are definitely some that I have looked at and I'm like, oh, that's even too embarrassing to make fun of. And I really, really try not to filter myself in that way because
Right.
I really, like you said, I want to embrace the cringe. Like everything is cringe.
Mhm.
Now I've been doing this long enough that I can even look back on some of my early videos and I'm like, that's cringe. I don't know why I thought that was funny, but it's
Right.
the evolution of who you are.
Yes.
So I think that is one thing. If there is one thing that social media has given us that is a positive, is that we are able to see so many different people live in different ways and maybe make small mistakes, whether those are missteps in
Mhm.
life or just missteps in fashion and eyebrow trends, and we can kind of
Right.
know that we're not alone in that instead of feeling like, oh my God, I'm the only one who is so
Yes.
embarrassing.
Yes, and I have been crippled by my perfectionism. And also it's so funny because like when I look back, I do a lot of like inner child work and like younger self work. When I look back, the thing that I love most about the younger self was like I did not give a single fuck. I knew that I was weird. You know what I mean? Like I played in the woods by myself because I lived 30 minutes out of town. Like we didn't have, you know what I mean? There was no
Yeah,
internet. I was playing pretend with the mud. I did not care about anyone's opinion of me. And I think I'm working so hard to get back to that because I just know the liberation that will come from that will be so freeing. But I wish I could remember who the original podcast was. But she basically said, if you don't look back at your old work, like your earlier work, and cringe, that you're not growing. So I do try
exactly.
to remember that too, is like, yes, because the podcast, like the earlier episodes, it didn't start this way. A lot of times too, I think for creative people, and your TikTok may have been this way too. I know mine was like I stumbled into making that Bravo video and then it kind of evolved. But like my earlier video, it's like you don't know, you're just figuring it out. Like we're all just
Yeah,
fumbling around until we stumble onto something. It's like, okay, this works, but that's the artist's way, it's like you're figuring it out as you go.
exactly. That was my experience too.
Well, you're doing a great job, and I love your videos, and I do think that the nostalgia is something that people connect with. And I do want to ask you too. I had the question that I was trying to think of exactly how I was trying to word it, and then I heard it was on a TikTok. She used the term, and I was like, "That's it." She said it was nostalgia fading.
Mm.
So with companies, I listened to one of your episodes too that was talking about like advertising during Y2K, which was fascinating. But do you think now that companies are it because it feels like it's cheapened it, like the cat commercial, it's like a cat chow commercial with JC from NSYNC. It's
Oh
like,
my God, I haven't even seen that.
oh my God, no, Jenna, it's like it's sad. For me, it's like
Oh,
it feels like the downfall of like at what point is it like y'all are taking away from the beauty of it and now you're cheapening it because you think that we're like dumb enough to buy into it just because you You know what I mean? Because you found someone
Put
from
an in
boy
syncer
band.
in there. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's really interesting, and this is actually on my list of episodes that I wanna do, is a
Uh-huh.
full episode just about the power of nostalgia and kind of this boom that we've
Mhm.
had, I think really since COVID, which kinda makes sense, we were all just, like, stuck at home, and a lot of people physically moved home during COVID, so, like,
Right.
I know when I go home to visit my parents, it's so nostalgic because 'cause I'm in it,
Right.
literally. So, yeah, the advertising piece I think is really fascinating because just like anything, when it starts to catch on, everybody wants to capitalize off of it and make money off of it however they want. And, myself included, this is my full-time job now. So I
Right.
cannot critique without implicating myself fully in it. If it weren't for the popularity of this, I would not have this as a job. So
Mhm.
I definitely think that with this big swing in nostalgia
Mhm.
popularity, every single brand kind of tried to grab onto that. And my personal opinion is that I think we're in the decline now of the nostalgia boom. I
I
think the
hope
peak
so.
was probably about 2022.
Right.
And over the past year or so, I've seen it kind of fall off. Even if I look at the um brand deals that I do on my own,
Mhm.
there was a time when every brand that was coming to me with a specific nostalgia based campaign. So it was a product that they were re-releasing or relaunching or kind of, rebranding
Right.
to throw back to the old one, or it was some sort of collaboration, or it was just a campaign that was for a contemporary product that was based around nostalgia. And over the past 6 months or so, maybe even a year, that has really decreased. I've had a lot more brands come to me with really open-ended creatives, and that could be partially just because I've been doing this for a little bit longer, so they have a little
Right.
bit more faith in my creative ability. I don't know, but I
Right.
think my gut feeling is that we are in the decline, and I think, yeah, like you said, it has become really kind of watered down.
So do you think maybe that that's one of the reasons that it's on the decline? Because it seems like people are catching on of like, y'all are baiting us. It's like they're trying to sell it back to us, and it's like we can tell the difference between what's actually nostalgic and this like manufactured
100%.
representation. Because even in your episode where you were talking about advertising, you made a really good point talking about like advertising back then was marketing professionals and they were still trying to sell us things, but it didn't necessarily feel that way. And I think maybe a lot of it has to do with now like algorithms of what you said that most advertising is done through algorithms. So it's almost like those I saw a comment that was talking about it was on Instagram talking about AI creating art and it's like the importance of a soul once you see AI created art versus like a human. It's like they
Yes.
took the soul out of it, and it feels too not only are we bombarded by advertising non fucking stop. I made a TikTok about that too that was like I've got advertising fatigue. And
Yes.
it does feel so specific that it's like y'all are like you're too zoomed in. You know what I mean? It's
Yeah.
like they're trying to predict what I like and they're wrong.
And they're wrong.
You know?
And I think that is a huge part of it is just this oversaturation. When something becomes so oversaturated, it becomes really transparent that you're using it as a device to do whatever you're trying to do. In this case, with marketing, obviously sell us product. So I think that in the beginning it felt novel. It was like, oh, I haven't caught on in a conscious awareness of the fact that nostalgia is trendy. So when I see an advertising campaign that's utilizing nostalgia, it speaks to me in an actual way that is their intention, right? It gets to my emotions. But
Yes.
now that we have been able to see the pattern and it's not novel anymore, we see it as what it is, which is, like you said, it's soulless when it's advertising. It's
Yeah.
even now at this point and it just mirrors the natural trend cycle too. There's always a period of early adoption. And then there's kind of that sweet spot where it's going from early adoption to like mass market where
Right.
everybody's jumping on board. It feels really fun. It feels really cool. It feels really novel. And that's where nostalgia was in like 2021. And
Right.
then it gets to the top of that, arc where everybody's done it. And then we kind of go into the downfall where it's become overly saturated. It's not cool. It's not novel. It doesn't feel like it has a soul anymore because literally everyone has done it. If you look at it from a
Right.
fashion lens, this is when all the knockoffs are in Target and you're like, all right, that's cute, but
Yes.
like it doesn't feel the same because it doesn't
Right.
have that heart. It's made of plastic instead of whatever it was. Not to say that I don't own a ton of Target knockoffs, but you know what I mean? It's
Right.
like
No, I get it.
it
No,
doesn't
I
capture your
saw
emotions in the same way.
Yes, and I saw, I think it was like a trend forecaster that was basically talking, and I can't remember the specifics, but it basically said that of like, if you want to be ahead of the trends, it's like by the time everyone else has picked up on it, you should be moved on to the next thing, you
Yep.
know?
Yep.
So, at what point do you think that nostalgia becomes dangerous? I feel like that may be too strong of a word, but they say anxiety is looking to the future and depression is looking to the past. Is it dangerous? Because I'm thinking specifically like boomers who have this fear of evolving, and now we're realizing, especially after the creation of the internet, it's like you've got to move on or you've got to get left behind.
Or
Do you?
delusion.
Oh, you're right. So do you think there's a point, and do you think we're close to it?
It's really interesting. And I think it's very individual because some people might look
Mhm.
at me, and people do actually. I get this question a lot. People will ask me, like, isn't it depressing living in the past? And my answer to that is, I don't live in the past at all. I really
Right.
don't. I have no desire to actually go back to those times. I can look back at those times very fondly and have great memories and
Mhm.
laugh and appreciate them. And I am a very nostalgic person in that way. But I don't have this deep longing for the past. I don't have this distaste for the present that
Mhm.
makes me feel like things were actually better. And I don't know if that's just kind of looking at things a little bit more critically, or if that's just, I don't know. I don't know what that is, but I think that is something that I've been exposed to doing the kind of content that I do that makes me feel kind of sad, is that I do talk to people sometimes who do have that deep longing, and they're like, I
Mhm.
don't know what to do because I just feel like my life is not fun anymore. There's no joy in it anymore. And that's the appeal of nostalgia, right? Is that it reminds us of a time when our life was carefree. We didn't have responsibilities. Life felt
Mhm.
better because we just didn't have those heavy adult things weighing on us. But I don't know where the line is between remembering that fondly, but appreciating that that was a time in the past and we have moved on from that, and being so wrapped up in the desire for that feeling that we can't live life fully in the present. I don't feel that way, but I know there are people that do. So I
Right.
don't I don't know that I think that the nostalgia trend is necessarily making that worse. Maybe it is, but I think, on the flip side, I do talk to a lot of people who say, I've had some sort of traumatic experience in my life, and this kind of content just brings me so much peace. So I
Yes,
think that it can do both, but I do think that that's a very individual kind of
that's true.
line.
That's
Yeah.
true. And I do think, I don't know, because I'm thinking about like your content, because we're talking about being at the end of this trend. And I would hate to think that your content would go anywhere, because for me, it feels like it's coming from a place of like it's not a bit. You know what I mean? And I think you have enough separation, like you're saying, between like I'm not living in, you're not just like watching VHSs of recorded simple life all day, every day, like, why am I here?
Yeah.
I think you get a separation of it. But I think it's important, like you said, if it makes people feel good to look back on, I think it is good to give people that, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. And I think also one thing that I've realized is that it helps me actually realize how far we've evolved away from things, because sometimes you don't recognize how much things have changed until you have those hindsight glasses. And sometimes
Yes.
I've been doing a lot of content about the 2010s now, and I think that nostalgia isn't necessarily going to just end. I think it's evolving. And I'm seeing a
Right.
lot more people now talking about early 2010s. They're talking about the Tumblr era. They're talking about Coachella in 2014 or whatever it is. So there's this kind of
Yes.
evolution of what the nostalgia looks like. But
Right.
what I have found as an elder, or I guess a mid millennial who was
Right.
firmly an adult in the early 2010s, sometimes I'll put on those outfits and I'm like, I did not realize that we have moved so far away from this. It
Yeah.
feels like it was yesterday, but then I put it on and I look at myself in the mirror and I think this was a totally different person who would wear this
Right.
outfit. So I think
Right.
maybe in that way it can help people kind of recognize, like, we're not there anymore. We have evolved, we've moved past that, and that's okay too.
Yes, like mile markers of our progress.
Exactly.
So do you think that's something too? Because like exactly what you're saying, like of course this time period now, and I'm sure there's gonna be like COVID core, where it's like we look back at that. So Do you think
tie-dye
that your
sweatsuits.
content is going to move from 90s, 2000 and move on? Do you think you'll keep doing it, or what are your plans with your content?
I really go back and forth on this a lot. I think if you look at a career of anybody in social media or content creator,
Mhm.
you have to evolve or you will just fade away and die. So
Right.
I definitely do want to evolve my content. And this is one of the reasons I love TikTok. I don't know how you feel about TikTok versus maybe the other platforms. On Instagram, I feel like I have to be so niched because if I post
Mhm.
one thing that's slightly off, everybody's like, what is this? The algorithm doesn't know what to do with it. On TikTok, I just post whatever. Honestly, like if it pops into my little mind and I want to make it, I make it and I
Yes.
post it.
Yes.
So I'm definitely feeling that evolution coming. I don't think that I will be able to be a nostalgia creator for the long haul because I've aged out of trends. I
Right.
still really enjoy fashion and I have my pulse on the trends in some way, but they're not the trends because the trends are aimed at people a decade younger than me or more.
Right.
And I'm not interested in that. It's not who I am anymore. So I don't know. I don't think I can continue to recreate trendy outfits from the time in the same way because it doesn't reflect my life anymore. And that's such a huge part of my content is that it's all
Right.
really, really based on my life. So I don't really
Right.
know what the journey looks like for me. We'll
What the
see.
future holds.
Yeah.
Well, and this is another thing too, which this may be not that I've ever been accused of having my finger on a single trend pulse, okay? But I feel like now, especially, people are kind of finding their own style and it's not so I'm thinking of like the Devil Wears Prada when she's like, "We tell you what you like." It feels much less like that, and a lot of people are into thrifting and it feels like it's almost too like the net is too wide
Yeah.
that there are not such niche trends
And it
that
moves
like
so
the velour
quickly.
jumpsuit. Exactly. So it might be harder, like you said, to nail that down too. So it might not be that we've aged out because I'm sure younger people do have the trends and stuff, but a lot of it is recycled anyway. So it's all recycled. So maybe we'll go back to like the 20s or something.
Probably. I mean, at this point,
Right.
what else are we
It's
gonna
it
do?
right, right. And I remember that too when I was younger. I remember having that thought. I really like when I look back on my younger self, I'm like, she really knew what was going on, and everyone gaslit her into thinking that she didn't know. But I was like, it just doesn't make sense to me why like I didn't like skinny jeans. I didn't like the way they looked on my body. So I was like, why can't I just wear the things I want? Like I want to wear poodle skirts because I like those, I think they're adorable. I would love to wear like 1940s dresses. I want to get into like making my own clothes because I can sew and I feel like I may could do it, at least a couple of like pieces that I think would be sick for me to have. But I never would have worn like handmade clothes at that point ever. But I remember thinking it's so weird that people don't just dress in whatever like decade or era that they want to. Like why does it have to be with what's in the stores right now? You
That's
know?
so funny. I was like, not. It's funny to think about that because I've never actually connected these dots before now. When I was young, I obviously followed a lot of trends. You can see it in my videos. But at
Right.
the same time, I was not shy about what I wore, and I should have been. Okay. I want to be clear. Some of the stuff I wore, I should have thought twice. But if I
Right.
liked it, I just wore it. And that was kind of my identity almost. I was in a really
Yeah.
small town in the Midwest, like a farm town. There was nothing there for me. So I created it with clothing and I was like wearing the craziest shit I could find to my high school
Right.
with like kids
Right.
were literally rolling in their farm clothes and I was strutting down the hall in like bedazzled jeans, huge platform shoes and a shin length fur trimmed purple duster sweater like with my hair flipped out like Mary Kate and Ashley and I
Yes.
was like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's like I look amazing.
Can I tell you something? Jamie Spears was the one because I remember distinctly. I felt so cute. I took school pictures one day, and my hair was flipped out, Mary Kate and Ashley style. And we were in the bathroom by the gym, and she looked at me and she was like, "You don't flip your hair out, you flip it under." And I was like, "Okay." Never flip my hair out again. It's like, oh, well, Jamie said. So it was under, not, and she's where I got a lot of my trends because, like, obviously, you know what I mean. She was coming back with but now I've got nothing. I'm like you. It's once I started dressing for, not that I ever really was like fashionable, but when I was wearing like oversized t-shirts and Sophie shorts all the time, that was what I was comfortable in. And then I resented people whenever it like became cool and people started wearing the oversized shirts. It's like, I don't want to wear this anymore because now it looks like I'm trying to be on trend with y'all,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's the curse. That's the curse
Right.
of being a trendsetter. Eventually,
Right.
your trend will catch on, and then you're like, man, all you people look like me. I thought I had something unique and original.
Yes, I'm gonna change it up. That's called being a taste maker.
There you go. You see, you are
Period.
very trendy. You have your finger on the pulse. You
Right.
created that pulse.
I create the but that's gonna be my affirmation. I'm writing that on the top of my mirror.
Me
Well, I'm
too.
excited to see what content you come up with. And I love, again, I'm gonna encourage everyone to go listen to your podcast because it's incredible. Your TikToks are amazing. And I really am excited to see how you evolve.
Thank you. Yeah, it'll be a
Yeah.
journey. I'm curious to see what happens with this whole TikTok situation. We can just keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best, I
I've
guess.
got faith. I have
Yeah.
I had a lot of like doom because you said I don't know how you feel about TikTok. The amount of like love that I feel for TikTok, I could literally write a thesis about how I think it's the algorithm is so powerful and so niche, that I think, and especially because of this, like this is the part that I love. And I know everyone keeps saying this, but it sounds corny, but it's true. Like the connections that you make, I have made some of the best connections. I've met some of the most interesting people and people that I don't know how we stumbled onto each other's TikTok, but like I
Yeah.
have you, I have someone
Bravo, I
who
guess.
does like Bravo, yes. I had someone who does like fashion. I met a flirt coach. Like you find all these
Ooh.
interesting people who I did a podcast with, but it was all these interesting people that we do have this one, thread that brings us all together. So I'm with you. I hope that it sticks around and I want to be hopeful.
Yeah, me too. And I feel like it fosters so much more creativity than a lot of the other platforms, which as a
Yes.
creator myself, I need that space where I can put things out there in a place where it feels like I'm able to explore and kind of push the boundaries of what I'm creating
Yes.
instead of having to kind of recreate these formulaic things that I feel like you really have to do
Yes.
on other platforms.
Well, thank you so much for joining me. I told you I was not going to try to talk too long because, between the two of us, we could have gone, but we did pretty good. We kept
Yeah,
it
that
at a
was pretty
reasonable.
good.
So thank you, Jenna, for coming on. I'm going to link her information so everyone can go follow her. And I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you so much. This was fun.
Of course. We'll do it again sometime. All right. We'll talk to you guys all soon.